This is the Misdirected Mark Podcast, a podcast about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you, our listeners. We are explicit, you have been warned, and I'd like to thank Mike Willard for letting us use his music on our show. Now let's pick up those mics and get on with this thing.
Why, yes, oh, yes, oh, yes. Let us pick up those mics and get on with this thing. And on this episode, we're going to go all 101 on you with jamming advice. It's getting back to basics this episode, but most importantly, we have my partner in crime back, the power man to my Daredevil, because Iron Fist has some issues. He's back, and with that...
My name is Phil.
And I'm Chris.
And I'm Old Man Logan.
Yeah, thanks. I originally liked the Power Man idea until the TV show came out.
Yeah, right?
And, I'm neither that rich, that whiny, or I hope that privileged.
No, because I'm the Iron Fist, and I am not privileged or whiny or that. That's the
Oh,
problem.
I'm Power Man?
Yeah.
Oh,
I think we need to fix that. I think we need to make it a triumvirate now.
Yeah, Bob wants to go all Avengers.
Yeah,
up
we
on
need
this.
we need a team. What's a three-person Marvel team?
I mean, we could be the Super Friends.
Except they had a lot of people.
Well, I meant like the Spider-Man, Iceman.
Firestar, Iceman. Yeah,
he gets to be Firestar.
Whoa,
There's nothing wrong with
hang on. If anybody's going to be Spider-Man out of the trio,
Oh
it's got to
boy,
be
here
me.
it is. He's gonna claim Spider-Man.
What?
Because that's Bob's favorite superhero.
With great power comes great responsibility.
I've got seniority. Get off my lawn.
I actually, when it comes to the show, I have seniority. Last time I checked,
Yeah, but I'm over.
Most shows logged, Chris.
most shows like Chris. Oh man.
I mean,
I'll just make up some superheroes for us at some point. We'll just make up some superheroes.
you got to admit though, I mean, I don't really, I like when I'm not here, like it's either because I'm geographically not here, or I've really done fucked up something. Really,
You done fucked up,
Phil
brother.
doesn't do anything half-assed. He goes whole ass.
Man, I am fucked, man. Oh.
So, I guess with that,
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Bob,
what's going on?
Bob, buddy, old pal, what is going on?
Man, I'm fighting the funk, man. I have just been in this
He's
for
got
like
the
weeks.
funk.
It's not the kind of funk you want, though. I mean, normally you want the funk.
got the
You got to
funk.
have that funk.
The sad old.
This is
funk.
not the kind of funk.
Jerry's got it. Cap, Falcon, and Bucky.
Yeah, there you go. Cat, Falcon, and
I could
Bucky.
be Bucky, man. Now I've got the titanium arm.
There you go. It's the right arm too. The left.
I just do that thing where
The correct arm.
where I catch the shield.
Yeah.
Clank.
Any hoozle. Yeah, I've been in, like, weird stuff. My house is a pain in my ass. The power's out right now.
Yeah,
and
that's
there's
not
water
good.
coming in the basement, which means the sump pump's not going to run. So my ex-wife roommate may have to bail the sump pump out.
Literally bail.
But on the plus side, last week Chris and I went to see a hockey game,
We did,
which was
didn't we?
very much fun.
Was that last week?
did they
It was
win?
last week or the week before?
It was the week before, I think.
I don't remember. These days are all blurry now. But hey,
Was that one of the ones where they didn't lose by like 4
they
goals?
won the game. They actually
3-1.
won the game. It was 3-1 with an empty net goal.
Fun game to watch.
Yeah, good time.
Probably like the last fun game to watch lately.
This past Sunday morning, we played more of the sequence system.
Yeah, we did.
Nice.
And that system is nice.
Oh, it was nice too because Effie and Cindy from Lake Effect Gaming,
Yep.
that is the entity that I'm a part of with Jerry and Sean, that owns the Queen City Conquest these days.
Yep.
And in the future, you'll be hearing a lot more about that because there's going to be more events that we're going to be doing over the course
Absolutely.
of the year.
Absolutely. So, yeah, we played that with Glenn. And I really I'm excited about the potential for this game. This system is fun and fast, and it has a lot of potential to do a lot of stuff.
If you want to hear all about Sequence, you can tune into last week's after show.
There you
Because I
go.
talked about it for like 15 minutes.
Yeah, there's some mathy things we need to do. Like we need to really understand the math, and
Yeah,
either
yeah, absolutely.
I either need to find the probability curves for the mechanics of that game, or we're gonna ask our mathy gnome Matt Nigley to run some numbers for us.
Yep.
I like the system a lot.
Yeah.
And I just want to before we pursue it deeply,
Yeah.
like publication deeply.
Yeah, yeah.
I want us to know the math so that when we make hacks and changes to it, we're fully cognizant of, yes, if you add an extra die, this is what happens, or if your starting die pool is going to be 5 instead of 4, this is what it means in terms of success failures and things like that.
Yeah. Good
Oh,
stuff.
look at that. Suicidal Pixie. That's a new name in the chat room.
Yeah,
That must be
who's-
Effie.
Oh, is that who that
I
is?
imagine that would be Effie. Hello,
Lovely.
Effie.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us.
So yeah,
Kevin's right. There is actually a kids game, board game called Sequence, which uses cards and stuff like that.
We're just calling it the sequence system.
The Sequence system. Yeah.
Yeah, the role-playing game is not... Any role-playing game made on it, like, will not be called sequence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's just an engine name.
Yeah,
And it's
exactly.
early.
yeah. There you go.
It's early.
Yeah,
like,
it's super early.
yeah.
So we'll save the best for last. Chris, how you doing, man?
I mean, we didn't ask Phil.
Well, that's what I was going to say. We saved
Oh,
the
so
best,
the best
for
for
last.
last. I see how that is.
Roll him back into the.
I get, that just shows you what I think of myself. At
Roll.
some times.
Roll me slowly.
Oh man! So I played some more of Dresden Files Accelerated with the Wednesday evening podcast. Also, we had some serious technical glitches, so that was a problem. But we still got a bit of a game in it. It's been a while since we played together, so it was great to hang out with those folks and play again. And we had our Lake Effect gaming meeting, which we got a lot of stuff set up, and then I project boarded up a bunch of things, and we're moving pretty well on those things. So you'll be hearing a lot more about that. Like I said, I went ice skating for the first time in years on Saturday, which Phil is grimacing over there. But I used to play a lot of
sounds like doesn't sound as much fun. As,
yeah, I used to play a lot of roller hockey when I was younger, and I can ice skate too. So being back on skates was pretty great for me, and I'll be doing more of that in the future. Like I didn't even get to skate for as long as I wanted to because the person I was with was not as adept or apt to be out on the ice as long as me, and we had to leave a little earlier than I wanted, but that was okay. Like I can't wait to get back out there. I think I'm gonna go ice skating on Thursday. So Sunday I watched some football. I was really hoping the Patriots would get beat, but they didn't. And
oh man, I right up to that third quarter. So I'm watching that game, and Dante, who I'm sad to admit is a Patriots fan, is like all down because
they're getting beat.
they're getting beat,
'Cause
and
it's
I'm like,
2010 in the
and I'm
fourth?
like, listen, I'm like, I hate to even say this to you, Dante, but it's the fourth quarter. Brady has pulled off more fourth quarter victories with a 10-point deficit or more. I'm like, this game is not done.
No.
Like, is not done.
Especially when the refs forget to call penalties on them.
Or call penalties that shouldn't be penalties, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Like I don't care about that.
Yeah.
That play to Amendola that on 3rd and 18,
Oh, that was ridiculous.
that was dumb.
It was dumb.
There's no reason he should have got that. Like
Nope.
if you want to point at a play in that game,
No, that plays pretty much.
shifted everything. Like
Well, there was
messed
that
everything
weird
up.
flea flicker thing that actually lost them the ball.
Yeah.
And that was great. I was like, oh, is this the nail in the coffin?
Yeah.
Listen,
Should have been.
I loathe Tom Brady. I mean, I live in Buffalo. I hate the Patriots. I loathe that guy. That guy can win games.
Tom Brady's the best quarterback that has ever played. Period.
I can't.
It's hard to argue that. It really
right.
is.
You can't argue it.
So-
I still hate the guy, but
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Like I
But-
can't stand him.
But man, that guy can win.
Yeah.
He's the best quarterback I've ever seen play the game. And I was having a discussion with somebody about it before. I was like, can you really compare that to even like previous eras of football? And I'm like, I mean, yes, like I would have loved to see like Johnny Unitas play in the modern era to see what he could have done.
Yeah, but you know what's funny when you think about that? Like a guy like Johnny Unitas would be murdered because if you look at what he was playing against,
Yeah.
like the average lineman,
Yeah.
that would sack him was like half the size of one of those guys today. Like Unitas would take a
that's
hit.
a cornerback.
I'm
now.
going
Yeah.
to assume for the sake of comparison that like Johnny Unitas modernized to today. Like
That would be interesting. Like,
Yeah.
because I mean it's just funny because when you look I used to love watching those NFL films.
Yeah.
And when you like see the size and dimensions of some of those guys in the 60s
yeah.
compared to now, compared to the sports medicine, the nutrition, the workouts, like I mean, it's ridiculous.
Like I think Tom Brady's a poor sportsman. I think he's
Yeah, he's a crybaby. He's a
whiner.
poor sportsman.
He's a cheater.
He's a terrible winner. He's He's even a worse loser. Yeah.
And he is still the best quarterback I've ever seen play the game.
It sucks. It sucks to have to say all those things. I mean, this Super Bowl has wound up being if there was a Super Bowl I could care less about, this is it.
Oh, that's right, because you're a Giants fan. That's
right.
hilarious.
Like I'm a Giants and Bills fan. There is nothing like
Yeah.
the best thing that could happen in this Super Bowl is that a 777 plane just landed right in the field in the middle of the game.
it's like every time the Cowboys play the Eagles for you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Cowboys and Eagles. That's another game where if like the whole stadium sucked into the ground.
Yeah.
I just shrug. I don't even know who to root for.
I was all set to root for the Eagles until I saw what their fans did at the Vikings game.
That was pretty shitty.
Those fans are pretty shitty. I'm sorry. That's whatever.
I wanted Minnesota to win that game so bad.
Oh my god.
Oh,
Because
I
how
did.
cool would it have been for them to play a Super Bowl in their home stadium?
I did, but I mean, after that first touchdown,
The
it was all
interception.
over.
Oh my god, he threw that pick and the game was just over. Like, it's just ridiculous.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that's your football for the day. I
This has
suppose.
been
Yeah,
our moment
sorry.
of sports trivia or sports information.
What did I do? I watched Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yay.
The movie is still so good.
Yep.
the first one, yeah, it's classic.
Yeah. All right. I guess that's all. And so, okay. In the after show, we're going to talk more about football because we're going to talk about the Brady Belichick thing.
Sure.
Because the short answer is, Belichick wasn't really much of anything until Tom Brady.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can deny Belichick.
One could
I
argue,
mean,
yeah, that.
And last time I checked, the season that Tom Brady didn't actually play the entire season was the last time they didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Maybe the only time they haven't made the
I mean,
playoffs lately.
but it's look. We can get into it in deeper, but look, that whole team. There's depth everywhere.
Sure.
I mean, Gronk goes out, and everybody else steps up.
Let's one more quick thing, and then we'll table this for the after show. The word depth is actually the wrong word because there's a lot of places on that team that they don't have depth.
Yeah, it's probably better.
Because depth means that you've got
In one
guys
position.
that can come up that are normally of equal
Yeah.
to the task. They have nobody's come in off the street and they throw them in the lineup,
That's
and it's
accurate.
like, oh, this guy's suddenly playing like an all pro.
I mean,
I don't know how that works.
It's that whole system.
Yeah.
Like that whole system will take any average NFL guy, and Brady can hit him with a ball.
Yeah,
And
they'll catch it.
yeah, and they'll catch it. Yeah, it's
So yeah, that's the thing.
okay.
all right, let's move on.
Let's move on.
Phil, what's going on with you?
I broke my arm.
What? How did I not know about this?
I broke my arm 2 weeks ago.
So the thing that nobody knew about, that everybody knew about.
Oh.
Phil broke his arm.
I broke
Yeah.
my arm. I promise in the after show I'll tell a more gruesome version of it.
He
But
didn't just break it. He broke it done good.
I broke it really bad, and I had to get surgery. What's actually called a open reduction. So it's the humerus, the upper arm bone, and by open reduction, it's a surgical procedure where they open you up and then put screws and a plate and put it all back together instead of letting it.
Which sounds weird because you're not really reducing anything.
Well, you're
I mean, if they
reducing,
were taking.
you're reducing the pain.
Yeah, that they're reducing.
What? You're not having bones grinding on bones anymore?
I'll tell you all about what
Yeah.
that's like when we get to the after show.
All right.
So anyway,
if you want to know about Phil's broken arm and all the terribleness surrounding it, tune into this week's after show. Just become a patron. We're
Here-
at 98
Yes.
patrons, by the way.
yeah, like
98.
I mean,
nice.
here's the thing. I've had to tell the story to like 100 doctors and nurses.
Yeah.
So I actually have it worked out now. Like there's a whole bit. Like I'll tell you, I'll just do the bit for you because it covers most of the details. So anyway, so that was the first time I've ever stayed at a hospital. That was the first surgery I've ever had. I've been off for work for over 2 weeks. I'm still pretty much riding the couch. There's I've got limited use of my left hand. I can actually use the hand. I have limited use of the arm. And I can mostly I can with a little time. I can get dressed. I can make myself breakfast. I can get up and around the house. I have not driven in 2 weeks. I don't know if I have enough strength in my arm to close my car door. And I can't quite, with the shoulder, I can't quite lean over to close the car door. So I'm going to try that out. I'm going to test getting in and out of the car in the next day or two to see if I can start driving again. But anyway, it was a broken bone, and now it's not broken, but it's all the healing from the surgery. So I will have a wicked scar when this is all done, and I will have a shit ton of physical therapy in order to reuse my arm. Like currently, I can use the biceps, so I can move my hand kind of up and down a little. But I can't use my shoulder, so I can't bring my arm up. I can't bring my arm out in front of me. I can't even remotely put it above my head. So And it was my left hand that broke, and I am left-handed. So I am now forced right-handed. And that adds a whole other challenge onto everything. So in any case, I've been riding the couch. So I've watched a ton of Netflix. Things I finished watching Mindhunters. It's a really weird series. Like I know a number of people who really liked it. I liked it, but it's weirdly slow on purpose. And I dug it, but like it was hard to watch because I couldn't watch it while I was on pain medication because I would just like drift off and go to sleep. Yeah. It wasn't fast enough. I watched the first episode of Riverdale. That's a really fucked up. It's great. It is a 90s CW high school,
But it's Archie.
And it's just weird enough that it's like, okay, I'm probably going to watch the rest of that first season. I started watching a couple other Netflix series. I found this really cool, I forget the name of it. It's in Spanish. I found this really cool Spanish crime thriller.
Yeah.
That is, it's like a 13 episode heist.
Oh, nice.
It's really slick.
Yeah, we talked about it at dinner. It's pretty cool.
Casa de Pepe, something like that. It's really good. And plus, because Netflix knows me, it immediately throws up for me. It's like, hey, we got a 4-part documentary on crime bosses.
Nice.
So I watched the first two, which the first two was the Medellin and the Cali cartels in Colombia, which, interestingly enough, is what the first 3 seasons of Narcos covers. And they had the actual real DEA agents in the documentary that the characters
Oh, nice.
from Narcos. So like all of a sudden I look and I'm like, God, this guy looks kind of familiar. And then like they put his name and I'm like, oh my God, I know the actor guy.
Yeah.
Like I know this character from the show.
Nice.
So anyway, I did a bunch of that. The other thing I did was I bought a couple of iOS games. So I've been playing Pixel Dungeon.
Pixel Dungeon.
Have you ever played Pixel Dungeon?
Maybe.
It's a roguelike.
I think I've played it.
It was primarily on Android forever. And there was no port to it for iOS forever. And it finally came over to iOS. So I've been playing it on my iPad. And it's a stupid roguelike. It's got like 16-bit graphics.
I think I have it on Steam. That's why I've played it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fabulously stupid game, but it's I can play it one-handed. And it doesn't require a ton of concentration. So back when I was on more pain meds, it was easy to play because you just kind of point and go.
Sure.
The other game I got, which is a board game adaptation to iOS, is Burgle Brothers. And I actually think I want this board game. It's a cooperative heist game.
Oh, that's cool. It sounds like right up your alley, man.
It's awesome. There's the board is it's tiles. And they're upside down, and they're different types of rooms and things like that. Like, could be a motion sensor, it could be a locked door or whatever. And there's always a safe and a staircase. And you have to find the safe and crack it and get to the staircase. And then there's a guard that at the end of each turn, like, autonomously moves around the board.
Nice.
And then each person plays a character that has a special ability, you know, typically like any co-op. And your goal is to work together to find the safe, because you have to flip over the tiles, find the safe, crack it, and get upstairs. And then you reset the board and you play 3 of those without getting caught.
Cool.
So it seems really neat. It's got a really cool art aesthetic. It's got kind of like a 60s, oh God, what would be almost like Powder Puff Girls. Like that kind of aesthetic with a square jaw man. Yeah. You know, those kinds of things. I'm digging it. I did pretty bad my first play of it, so I got to kind of dig in and try a little harder. Anyway, I don't know when I'm going back to work. So for now, like, this is my life. Like, I'm like on the couch and I watch TV and I nap, and I've had trouble reading. The pain meds really do a number on your concentration. So I haven't been able to read too much. And I'm hoping that now that I'm pretty much off of them, I could get some reading done. Anyway, for more gruesome details of how exactly I broke my arm and what it was like, I will share that in the after show. But in the meantime, we should probably mosey on into a topic, right?
Yeah,
That's what we do, right?
Yeah,
we do have a thing.
First thing, there is one announcement that I want to make. As of episode 301, that is when we're probably going to start our new segment, the game room, which is what we've been touting as the misdirected eye.
Yeah, we need to do some work on that.
We do.
I mean, my fault, but we do need.
But I'm still aiming at 301 to be the start of that.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. That would be what, project out to March?
Yes, I believe so.
Because 300 is usually around my birthday.
All right, well let's do the thing. Phil, you got the chops for it?
Oh, okay. Hang on.
You ready? You ready?
Workshop! Workshop! Play better games, damn it! Don't suck as a GM! You new GMs, be good from the start! Don't learn how like we did by sucking all the way through! Workshop! That's custom for our 101.
It was. Note for these show notes and for how this is going to go. I didn't color code these, so that's a problem. I didn't even think about it.
No, it's good. We'll
figure it out.
We'll
though.
figure it out.
All right.
yeah.
So the intro to this is Misdirected Mark GMing 101. There's a lot of stuff that we talk about in Misdirected Mark that is very in depth and it can be quite complex. But in this episode, we're going to talk a lot about the concepts and ideas we've covered over the years and try to give the simple versions of those. But we do want to encourage you to go back and listen to the episodes we mentioned here.
Later. So you're a 101 GM, right? So actually, let's just stop for a second. The reason we're doing this is because isn't January? Isn't January new GM month?
January is in fact new GM month,
and Monty Cook Games, Pelgrane, and a few others have been supporting this, right?
That's correct.
So we wanted to do our part, and
and we would have done this 2 weeks ago, but Phil broke his arm.
Right, we were going to do this 2 weeks ago, but I fell down on the
week, yeah.
I fell down on the job. But here's the thing: this show's not a 101
No, it's not.
GMing show. In fact, if you are a new GM and somehow somebody's put this podcast in your hands, by all means, come listen to us. Understand that we're not typically a 101 show. By all means, our Pandas Talking Game show is far closer to a 101.
That is correct.
Probably more like a 201, but still,
Sure.
It's but it has nice digestible advice. But we tend to do heavier things here, and we didn't want to. We wanted to contribute, right? We wanted to contribute to the to new GMs because it's important. People who want to learn should learn how to GM.
I agree.
And what we wanted to do was, like you said, we wanted to take some of our topics that we've actually gone pretty in depth with, and kind of done some really deep dives, and we wanted to talk about them and give you 101 advice about them. And then we encourage you, as you become a more experienced GM, to go back and listen to these episodes after you've run some games. Because after you've run some games, some of these concepts are going to make more sense to you. Sound
Absolutely.
fair?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah, okay.
So, first thing, latency, which is 168 and 169, episodes 168 and 169. Let's talk a little bit about what we're talking about when we're talking about latency. So, narrative latency, what is that, Phil?
So that's the time it takes when you stop the narrative, you jump into a set of mechanics, and you return to the narrative. And so, for example, again, because this is our 101 show, a skill check. So we are moving down the hallway, and then I say there's a locked door, and the person says, I would like to pick the lock. That's the end of the narrative, right? Then we talk about bonuses. I go through my sheet. What's my bonus? Roll my D20, add it up.
Yeah.
15. Is that going to open this door?
Yes.
Okay, 15 opens the door, and then the GM continues. Now the door opens, and this is what you see.
Correct.
That space from the time I said I'll pick the lock to the time that you describe what's behind the door, that's latency. And that's how long it takes to do the mechanics.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Good. So what's the, talk about some of the, what the deal is for this. Why is this important?
So, the reason it's important is because latency is a thing that interrupts flow of play. Or it can interrupt flow of play, depending on what kind of game you're looking to play, right? If the focus of your game is narrative, then it will interrupt that. If the focus of your game is game, then the narrative actually interrupts the game part. You can have it both ways.
You actually can, yeah, whichever one's more of the predominant focus.
So, you mentioned, you basically talked about narrative latency. There's a thing where there's choice and procedure, too.
Yep.
So choices, and you were kind of talking about procedure also when you were talking about pick up the dice, figure out the bonus roll and whatnot. But choices can be latency too. Anytime a choice point comes up and somebody has to decide, that can create latency.
Oh, absolutely.
Depending on how many choices there are.
Yeah, and this is that kind of choice latency is also a factor of how many people are playing the game.
Absolutely.
How efficiently they work together to make decisions. I mean, this is that thing where if you're going through a dungeon, choice latency remains fairly low. Go left, go right, fight this monster, run away. But if you want to see this latency blow up, create a heist.
Yep.
Create a heist and let people plan for it.
Yeah.
That is an exercise in latency.
It is, in fact, like latent. It's a strange thing. 'Cause there's so many, like, you're opening it up to so many choices. Like there's like almost like, because there's not really a 1, 2, or 3. There's a, well, what is our procedure for getting through? Not even procedure. Like,
are we going to sneak in? Are we going to rough them up? Are we going to are we going to con them? Yeah. But yeah, absolutely. Choices create a latency, and then talk about procedure.
So procedure is about how many steps you need to take to come out to the other side of a mechanic or a procedure, because we always think of procedures as mechanics around these parts.
Yep.
So a procedure is like, okay, so burning wheel. When you're playing a larger conflict, you need to create 3 choices for yourself, and put them face down in front of you, and then you will slowly reveal them, both sides, game master and players.
Yeah.
To see, and then match them up usually to a chart to see how they play out.
Then roll some dice.
And there's rolling dice too.
And then there's resolving dice.
Well, that's the matching it up to the chart.
Right.
Because you resolve the dice, look at the chart, see what's kind of going on, bonuses and things
Yeah.
like that. There's a lot of steps
Yep.
to a complex conflict in Burning Wheel.
Yeah.
Or at least in Mouse Guard, because I don't really know Burning Wheel that well, but I know Mouse Guard.
For our 101 GMs who probably aren't playing Burning Wheel, grappling is often a procedure that is highly latent.
At least in 3rd edition D&D or
Third
Pathfinder.
edition D&D, it is so latent.
I won't even call Pathfinder that bad anymore because they have that combat modifier bonus. But
it's actually so latent that we actually once did a whole show
on grappling.
on grappling.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because the procedure is so difficult. But anytime you have anything with multiple steps, in fact, Dungeon Crawl Classics has one of the most ridiculous procedures ever for wizard on spellcaster versus spellcaster combat. It is nuts. Like, I looked at it and it looks fun, but it's like 10 extra procedures that automatically get inserted in a combat turn. And it's like, whoa. Like, it looks fun because of the way the mechanics work, but procedurally it's this big chunky block of procedure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. There's way too many steps.
Mm-hmm.
So some tips for how to take your latency down. Really understanding your system and understanding that latency will occur and that it'll be okay. That's a good starting point. Like your game, if you're not familiar with it, it's going to take some time to understand procedures and mechanics.
Yeah, your first couple combats are going to be clunky.
Mm-hmm. And anytime you run into something that you haven't run into before, it's going to be kind of clunky.
Yeah, the first time somebody like falls into the water and needs to, and is about to drown, that's going to be a thing.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, just understand that. If you want to reduce it, learn your game as well as you can.
Yep.
The other one is cheat sheets.
Oh, by all means, cheat sheets.
Cheat sheets are great. They help bring down latency and they provide mastery because people are then all learning the game together.
And by cheat sheets, again, for our 101s, this could be a GM screen.
Uh-huh.
Or it could just be sheets that you print and have next to you.
Correct.
While you're playing. I'm a huge fan of making cheat sheets. And I think I even once did an article on Gnome Stew. Fairly certain.
Pretty sure you did.
Fairly certain I did an article on Gnome Stew about making cheat sheets. I like to make them. I make them pretty fancy, but you don't have to make them fancy to make them functional.
That's true.
But I get into it. Like I love making them and actually giving them back to communities.
Yep.
But if you're a new GM, if you Google around,
Yeah.
or if you're part of a community that plays that game, good chances somebody's got a cheat sheet for you.
It's true.
So just ask.
Okay, let's move on to the next one because otherwise we're going to be here all night.
Uh-huh.
So levels or layers of play. This was episode 209 and probably one of our most, if not the most popular episode as far as ideas about gaming goes.
This is probably one of our most original ideas about gaming.
Absolutely. So, Phil, what do we mean by the layers of the game?
So, when we're playing a game, we're interpreting the game in a series of different contexts. So, sometimes we're interpreting the game through the eyes of our character. Sometimes we are looking at the game from a mechanical level, sometimes layer, right? The mechanical layer. Sometimes we're looking at it as a group, like, what's best for the group or what's going on for the group. Sometimes we're looking at it at a personal layer. Am I comfortable? Did Bob say something to tick me off? When's the pizza getting here? That kind of thing. And so, the idea is that with layers of the game is that our focus moves up and down. And I say up and down because we say layers because they're stacked on top of each other. And our original model went from like the most focused, which is through the eyes of a character.
Yeah.
And then all the way out to outside of the game.
Yep.
Like, do I have to work tomorrow?
Here, I'll hit you.
Yeah.
Character, group, game, story, campaign, personal, out of game.
Right. And so the idea is that our focus is shifting, sometimes purposely and sometimes unconsciously, up and down these layers. And we'll find places where we're more comfortable. So sometimes we have a preference. Like some people like to play in that character layer, right? They like to stay really in character. Other people will play more like third person, right? They see their character as more of a thing they drive around the board. Sometimes things happen and you're pushed into that personal or out of game layer. Like you get a text from work, right, in the middle of the game, and it's an alert, and maybe you don't have to deal with it right away, but you want to see to make sure somebody picked up the alert or something like that. And so your focus is pulled out of more of the game, and you're actually more focused on yourself. And that's going to have that affects play, right? It affects how quickly we make decisions. It affects how we interpret what we're hearing from the GM and from other players. Because if my focus is on one level, one layer, I may not interpret things the same as if I was on another one. So it definitely has this this effect, and it's definitely something we all do, and there's nothing wrong with it. Like it's really more about just being aware of the layers, not so much about like eliminating them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's some of our 101 tips for that?
Well, as a game master, it really helps to understand what layers your players prefer to interact with. So if someone likes to play in character, or if everybody likes to play in character, then you don't want to you want to try to eliminate as much of playing in the game layer as possible. Yeah.
Conversely, and it's funny because I see this come up in a very different way, and we've had this discussion. I don't want to kick over a hornet's nest, but if your players don't enjoy spending too much time in the game layer, then you might want to find a game that doesn't actually need that much attention to it.
True.
You know what I mean? Like if you're playing like Roll Master, but your players really want to stay in the character layer,
maybe you shouldn't be playing Rollmaster.
Yeah, like maybe you want to switch to like a dungeon world.
But if you like emergent play,
yeah, or maybe you actually like. I mean, and maybe your players actually want to stay more in the game layer and crunch numbers and chew up monsters.
Yeah. So emergent. You're right, absolutely, for the game layer stuff. But emergent play is sort of like if people like playing in the story level, yes, and also the game level, because that is also part of emergent play. Then that's kind of where you want to focus your game. So it's a very OSR idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, that also goes to the game layer too, because when you were actually as a player interacting with the environment as more than your character is just sort of like an avatar for you.
Yep.
That is sort of like a game layer thing. Because you're not playing necessarily in character, you're playing yourself trying to beat the dungeon, like get around the traps in the dungeon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, like you want to just look at that stuff and be aware of what your players want, and then if you can interact with them on those different levels. And if once you get to the point where you're really comfortable, you can actually switch on the fly from addressing somebody in character to turning to some other player, and then addressing them in the third person.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I've often done the other one, whereas I will look at the story and be like, I think this is the part where Solar's just going to lose it, and then jump into the character layer, and just, have a tantrum or something like that.
Mm-hmm. And I guess the other thing is don't push players to be in a specific layer for play. It's okay for players to move through these layers. Like you don't need to force a kind of. I don't think it's good to force a style on anybody, especially because that breeds resentment and not enjoyment of the game.
Yeah, and recognize that if somebody's not feeling well, it's hard to actually stay in the character layer. Like if you're got a cold or you shouldn't have had that 10th jalapeno popper.
I feel like he's looking at you when he says that, Bob.
I don't eat jalapeno poppers.
Bob shouldn't have 10 jalapeno poppers ever.
Shouldn't have one jalapeno.
Yeah, I was going to say
popper.
you probably shouldn't have one.
Right. But it's that kind of thing where like suddenly you have like some sort of gastric disturbance and it's hard to stay in character if, all of a sudden you're like, oh, like I gotta, like, do I have to go to the bathroom? Do I have to get up? Am I going to is there a place in the story where we can stop where I can get up? Like we're in the middle of combat. Is that gonna, like suddenly you're not there. Right. And so, yeah, like you said, like don't as a GM be like, I don't know if I'll say this because I don't know if 101 GMs do this, but I remember as a kid, have you ever played with the GM that's like anything you say is what your character says from this point on?
I disapprove of that.
Right.
Yep.
Well, that's, it's definitely not my style. But I mean, like people have done that and that is that forcing into a character layer, right? Because it's basically saying, you now from this point on need to be in character. Anything you say, that's character now.
That's right.
Right.
And not right at the same time.
Yeah. So 101 GMs don't push for layers and understand that sometimes people back out of a layer and sometimes it catches them, right? Like it comes up on their initiative and they fell up enough layers that they all of a sudden don't quite know what's going on. Mm-hmm. Help them out.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on. Pacing and beat structure. That's episode 249. So this is how much time you take with scenes or encounters, asking yourself, what does a scene look like, how to start it, and when to end it. That is many of the things that we talked about in that episode. I find that for you 101 GMs out there, go pick up Hamlet's Hit Points. It's one of the best examples of how to understand beat structure, and the actual part of that book that explains beat structure is like 12 pages.
Right. In fact, do yourself a favor. Pick up Hamlet's Hit Points, and then Robin will tell you that if you don't read the rest of this book, just read this section, just read that section initially. Come back later after you've run a bunch of games and come back and read the rest of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, like I said, beat structure is about what does a scene look like? Like, how do you start it? So, in my opinion, you want to start as late as possible. Like right before the action or at a point where you're going to give the characters a choice. That is a great place to start.
We like a particular musical term for this. Get to the fucking monkey.
Oh, get to the fucking monkey.
What band is that?
I don't remember.
Tony would know.
Yeah, he would.
That I think was a thing before the song.
I mean, maybe, but I don't think we started widely using it until the song came up.
Yeah.
Because I remember Drew Smith being like, this song is great because it's exactly what we're talking about all the time.
Right.
But that was like years and years ago.
Right. So Get to the Fucking Monkey, which is a shorthand we like to use on the show, is exactly what Chris is saying. It's open your scene as close to the action as possible.
If you can. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with giving scenes for people to have space and whatnot, but like try to understand what the point of your scene is.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to let it be a scene where people can converse and act in character a little bit, understand that, and then put a cap on it and then try to introduce some action in it. Like that's all beats right there. So types of beats. There's the upbeat, the downbeat, the action beat, the drama beat, the investigative beat, the social beat, the procedural beat. It's a lot of different beats I just said.
It is. In the episode, we actually break into all those. And in Hamlet's Hit Points, Robin dives into these in depth.
Yeah.
But understand that things like an upbeat is when
something positive happens.
Yeah, some good happens to the characters.
Downbeat is when something bad happens.
Yeah.
An action beat is exactly what it sounds like when there is action, a fight, a chase, something like that.
Drama is a chance to express emotions and feel.
It's usually conflict in that manner. Mm-hmm. Social conflict, dramatic conflict. Like my feelings and my desires are this. Will you grant me those things, somebody, or will you deny me those things, somebody?
Exactly.
Investigative is like, we're going to get some clues and then try to interpret them.
Exactly.
Social is sort of the same as drama, but not necessarily. Like social is about talking to people.
Social, there's no give and take. Social, we could just be talking and not trying to grant or get.
Correct. Yeah, it doesn't have to. I mean, social beats are often drama beats, but they don't have to be.
Yeah.
I mean, social beats could be information beats. So also going along with investigative beats, they could be investigative
Yeah,
beats.
you could learn something from just talking to somebody.
Procedural beats are when something, it's not drama, it's the opposite of that. So procedural is like we're trying to accomplish a thing.
Yeah.
Like there is a task to be overcome.
Climb a wall.
Climb a wall.
Pick a lock.
Yep.
And if you really want to see that, if you want to see these beats kind of played out well, this book becomes kind of the foundation for Robin Law's drama system. There's
Yeah.
a lot of this baked into drama system, and when you move past your 101 and you're exploring different games, if you find this kind of thing interesting, you should definitely check out the drama system.
Did we talk about the 101 tip yet? I don't think we did.
We did not.
So the best tip as a 101 GM is you just think about your upbeat and your downbeat. Have an arrow or some sort of card on behind your GM screen, and or more than one. And if it's an upbeat, put an up arrow up. And if you ever get to the point where you have 3 of them in a row, then make sure you have an opposite beat. So if you have 3 upbeats, then you best make sure the next beat is a downbeat.
Right. And the reason we say that, and the reason why Robin says that, is that too many beats in a row and players become desensitized to it.
Correct.
So if you've ever watched a movie that is, and I wish I could remember because we talk about in the episode. So go and listen to the episode because we actually talk about a few movies that do this really well. You can't have too many action beats in a row before you kind of sweat the audience out. And so you have to have these downbeats or comedy and things like that. Like even like if you look at like Avengers 2, the opening of Avengers 2, right? So first of all, Avengers 2 opens as close to the monkey as you can get.
Yeah, they're in the middle of a fight.
Right, they're in the middle. Great opening, right? It opens right into the action. It's going to be an extended fight scene. We're going to have a lot of beats inside this fight.
Yeah, but there's a bunch of upbeats and downbeats in that fight.
That's what I'm saying, right? There's a bunch of upbeats and downbeats, and then there's a comedy moment, right? When Iron Man hits when Iron Man hits the shield, around the castle and swears.
Yeah.
And Cap calls him out on it, and he's like, language.
Yep.
Right? And that little beat, just that little beat in that moment, takes, like, it changes up what's happening. And then, we see, like, later in that fight, Hawkeye gets hit. That's a downbeat, right? Because we now become concerned about the heroes. And then the Hulk shows up and, just runs through that bunker. Right, like all those things, and then that sequence doesn't end until that whole thing doesn't really end until Tony gets the staff.
Yeah,
like until they're back on the Quinjet. So we have some investigative moments because Tony's going through. Right, we have a dramatic moment where Tony has the mental. It's not a flashback; it's what the Scarlet Witch put in his head, that kind of thing. So just that'll give you an idea of how. Of what we're talking about here. Like, go watch one of the Avengers movies. They're like the Avengers movies and the Guardians 1 and 2, really excellently. I think it's Guardians we actually talked about in that episode. Guardians has really good beat structure.
It's also a simple beat structure.
Yeah, it's easy to follow, but it's really good. Really good. I should watch that this week.
I actually tried to watch Guardians 2 again, and I actually had to turn it off in the middle. I got bored.
Really?
Yeah.
I watched it, but I was high on hydrocodone. I drifted off.
Guardians 2 does not have the same quality beat structure as Guardians 1.
You know what? I agree, but Guardians 2 hits me like deep in the feels.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing for me in Guardians 2. Like Guardians 1 did all the work to invest me in those characters. Guardians 2 pays me for all that investment.
It's true. I mean, like, there's a more character-driven
story. I think it's much more.
I just don't think, I mean, this is a total aside. I don't think that movie is paced as well. I don't think it's as tight as the first one.
I will agree with you. I think that the pacing on Guardians 1 is like, pacing on Guardian 1 is so good it's almost textbook.
Yeah, I can't argue that at all. Yeah.
Yep.
And pacing matters to me, so that's probably why I think it's a less movie.
All right. But oh man, but the feels. Plus, I do love that scene where Yondu gets his arrow back.
Yeah.
and they play
It's great.
what is it, Bad Man Jose?
Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
So good.
It's pretty excellent.
Okay. So yeah, that's the thing about 3 beats in a row. So be aware of it. So for instance, if you're doing a dungeon crawl and you have room with monster and a fight, room with monster and a fight, room with monster and a fight, don't try to
Do something else.
put a
Yeah.
like don't let the players out of the room yet. Have them sit and talk to each other, or give them a mystery or something
Or
to
next,
look at.
next room better be room with a trap.
Well, if they're designing it, yes. If they're not, they're at the mercy of whoever wrote the adventure. But you can insert these things. Like
Yeah.
you can. Here's how you insert it. So 101 tip: if you're playing an adventure and there's like 5 rooms in a row that are all combat, after the 3rd room, before the players leave the room, ask them a question.
Sure. That
Like,
works.
hey, how do you know? Like, how's your character feeling? Like, or hey, what did you think of? What did you think of Throndar's performance or action in this room? And just give them a moment to talk. Then let them go back to the next room and kill things.
All right. Episode 286, The Point of Prep. I think this is a supremely important episode for new game masters. So, Phil, what is the point of prep?
The point of prep is to be comfortable enough to run the game.
That's correct.
That is, listen,
it.
that is it. You will hear, first of all, you're going to hear some guy wrote a book all about prep.
Yeah.
All right? I'm going
He's
to
sitting across from me.
What a hack.
I'm gonna distill the whole book for you in one sentence. Still go buy the book, please. But the point of prep is to be comfortable enough to run the game. Do not buy into the idea of too much, too little prep.
Correct.
It is whatever you need. Now, if your prep is so enormous that you can't actually run the game within a given week, you are going to want to learn how to shrink it. And there are ways to do that. But the whole idea is that you come to the table confident, and if you're confident, the more confident you are, the better the game is going to run.
Your prep does not have to look like a pre-bought adventure that you've bought.
Right.
It should, in fact, because those people are writing for publication, which preparing for your game is not the same as writing for publication.
Your prep can be anything you want it to be.
I've done it from having binders full of stuff to having a note card to having nothing.
I've done note card. I've done note card while we're setting up the game. I have done. I used to have a Word template that was a 60-30 2-column, 60%, 30% 2-column layout, so that my actual my prepped notes went in the 60%, and the 30% was for me to write notes while we were playing.
Nice.
So that, like, as things happened in the scene, I could write them in. It was, those were, like, spell checked and grammar checked and formatted and shit like that. I still prep all my games with OneNote. OneNote is still my all-time favorite thing to prep with.
Let me see. I use index cards. I use a folder, and actually, it's like right on the inside of the folder. I use a notebook that's gridded. I've used a computer with just Word docs.
Yep.
I've used Google Docs.
I use OneNote and an iPad. I have an iPad mini that sits in front, like sits next to me at the table, and that I can scroll through it with one finger. That's my notes. In a pinch, because it's OneNote and it's up in the cloud, my phone, I can actually pull my phone out and open the same set of notes.
There you go.
Yeah, so I like OneNote a lot. In fact, it's really funny because I wrote that book like 5 or 6 years ago and said that OneNote was my favorite tool.
And still is.
Still my
Yeah, there you
favorite
go.
tool.
Yeah. Here's a few other things, I guess. real
Absolutely.
quick. Don't write yourself a script. You don't have to. You just need the information that's hardest for you to come up with. Like if it's D&D, then you might need a map and some stat blocks and what's in your dungeon. If it's a mystery, you need to give yourself a trail of clues for the characters to follow. Those are things that you kind of need to run the game.
Prep the stuff you're weak at.
That helps too.
Like
Yes.
if you're weak at monster descriptions, put the monster descriptions in your prep.
Yeah, and make sure that stuff's easily accessible.
Yeah. And listen, if you're using an electronic platform, cut and paste works in a lot of places.
Here's another great thing. I always like to prep more than I actually need
Oh, yeah.
because, you get comfortable letting go and reducing your prep over time, but like having more means that you probably don't need to prep as much the next time you sit down to
Oh
run.
yeah, absolutely. Like I often prep like about one, because I run kind of a lazy table. I shouldn't say lazy. I run I run a loose kind of table. Plus, I like NPC PC interaction, so I don't rush those. Mm-hmm. So yeah, a lot of times my prep is like 1.5 sessions. So the second session, I usually only have to come back in and like add a little bit to the ending.
Yeah,
that's 2 sessions worth. Yeah, don't. I guess our serious 101 tip for this is don't freak out over prep.
Yeah, I mean,
it's okay.
It doesn't have to look good. It just has to be functional for you.
Whatever it is you need. Don't, for God's sakes, don't be intimidated by somebody. And I certainly was. Actually, I was intimidated a lot when I first met Chris. I was a pretty serious prepper. And, Chris comes up and he's like, I got an index card and post-it note. Thought of a few things on the car ride over. Let's play a game.
And we did.
And we did. And because Chris could do that. And I eventually learned how to do that. But, I would show up to the table with like 10 pages of notes in a binder. And, I ran plenty of great games.
Yeah.
It's all about that confidence.
I've also done that too, where I've, written out 7 or 8 pages worth of stuff. Like, it's just that Phil happened to meet me when I was doing
on
something.
The other end of it.
I was doing something else, right?
Yeah.
Like,
so don't fall into that trap, for God's sakes. People, I see that come up on Twitter all the time. Like, I prep too much. You run in your game with confidence.
Yeah.
You're prepping enough.
I mean, if your prep is inhibiting you from playing as often as you want,
then you want to cut down your prep.
Yeah, that is, and figure out how to do so.
And to be truthful, back when I had a lot more time, I actually really liked doing my prep. Like, I liked doing it because it was my metagame activity. Mm-hmm. It was my activity outside the game. But now, like, I mean, with 2 podcasts, a publishing company, and stuff like that, I'm like, well, I need shit to run a game.
Yeah.
Like, I need 10 bullet points on a piece of paper. Let's get this game going.
Strange enough, my prep these days for games ends up becoming product. So, or
yeah,
will become product.
Yeah. So, if you're also creating for publication, like, you tend to write a little bit more as well. So yeah, don't sweat it.
We're going to go to the chat room for a second, but before we do that, I wanted to talk about another show on Misdirected Mark. Down with D&D. Chris and the Mad Wizard Sean Merwin dish about everything D&D with a focus on the brand and the newest edition of the world's most popular tabletop role-playing game.
Word.
If you're going to be at Winter Fantasy in the coming weeks, Merwin will be there. Also, former host and still sometimes backup host Cindy Moore will be there. You can probably catch Garrett Crow there too.
Is Robiducci going to be there?
I'm pretty sure Robiducci's going to be there also.
From our other podcast.
Yeah.
Do you know what I want you guys to do for Down with D&D?
What's that?
On anniversary episodes?
Yeah.
I want you guys to go back in time.
Do what?
I want you to do like Down with D&D 2nd edition.
That would be interesting.
Like, just like as if 2nd edition was new.
That would be
like, do like one episode about like
just
all the cool things.
Like, all right, it's 1984.
That's right. That's right. It's like it's 1989 and it's 2nd edition, man. Like, check out this sweet blue and white artwork.
That's right. Somebody asked if Mark will be there. I'm not sure if Napik will be there or not. I would imagine he's going, but who knows? Like, he's got different.
He's got children's.
He's got
all
different
over
priorities these days. So.
Well, and he's while Mark plays a bunch of D&D, that's not who Mark works for.
Correct. He works for Drive-Thru.
Yeah.
So, anything in the chat room, Bob?
It is.
I mean, I've been watching the chat room.
So
I just wonder if you pulled anything.
It's mostly scattered chatter. Some good conversation, and a few jokes that we hit earlier.
Yeah, they seem to be chatty.
But it's they're enraptured by the topic, I'm sure.
Carlin of the Hill people just said that Thaco is all you'll ever need and is perfect and will never be replaced. Nothing is more elegant.
There we go.
Notice how it's in quotes, though.
Yeah, it's totally in quotes.
Well, it's like when I bought my first computer. When I bought my first computer, I bought it with a 100 meg hard drive.
Yeah.
And the guy was like, listen,
you will
never fill this thing up. Like, okay, bud.
That would hold 3 podcasts.
It doesn't even actually hold a whole porn file.
It would only hold 2 of our podcasts.
Son, I got porn bigger than that.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I do. All right.
Let's get back into this, which we might actually get through it.
So those kits are so cool.
Let's talk about deliberate practice. That was episode 218. So deliberate practice is a highly structured activity engaged in with the specific goal of improving performance. So, Phil, you actually brought this up. I remember when we did this episode, it was a really, I think it's a really good episode to talk about. If you're somebody that's actually trying to improve your skills.
Yeah. So, all right. So listen, 101 GMs. You're going to realize, like, at first you're just trying to ride the bike.
That's right.
Right. Like you don't want to fall down on the bike.
Uh-huh.
And so all your effort's going to start by just learning to pedal the bike and driving around the block. And eventually you're going to get good at that. And then you're going to want to learn how to do a wheelie or ride with no hands or, do a trick. Mm-hmm. This is where we get into like deliberate practice. And so some of the things that we were talking about are rules mastery, for instance. Like maybe you want to really dig in and really know the rules of this game, right? That's because that's a thing. Maybe your descriptions, like you realize your descriptions could be a lot better.
Cool. So let's talk about that because that's way easier one to talk about for deliberate practice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, rules mastery, just go fucking study.
Yeah. You have to go study.
Yeah.
Right?
Go study.
There's also a thing with rules mastery where, well, while you're playing the game, like if there are particular rules that you want to master, you make sure that you write in sequences in your game.
Yeah.
That
to
will
give your chance.
Yeah.
And do it outside a game by studying.
That's incorrect. You do both.
Yeah. Or, what you do is you go into like one of those D&D forums. Mm-hmm. Where they're constantly asking questions and just get in there and.
So for descriptions though, like you can just practice like when you're driving anywhere, describe what you see
absolutely
out loud and like you would if you were describing it as a game master.
Yep. One of my favorite things to do is I love people watching. So like if I go to the airport or the mall or anything like that, I will sit and watch people. And imagine like who they are. Like, because I just want to like get a feel for NPCs, right? So like, what's this guy's personality? Like, like suddenly like there's a guy talking a lot with his hands, right? Like that's to me that becomes interesting. Like because one of those things that I try to work on is like, what's an interesting thing about a NPC? Because NPCs generally need like one interesting thing.
Yeah.
So like when I people watch people, I'm like, what's the interesting thing about this person?
Oh, there you go. It's a good one.
Laughs too loud.
And write that stuff down.
Yeah. Or, just if you can write it down or just, make little games. Make little games for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But descriptions. Yeah. Describe.
Yeah. I mean, there's a bunch of other things that you can deliberately practice, of course.
Can I now your degree is in creative writing.
Correct.
Can I ask you a thing?
Sure.
Because I did a lot of creative writing in middle school, high school, and a little bit in college. But I didn't actually take any classes for it because I was a giant science dork. But one of the things that I did myself was, and I would do it as practice, is that sometimes I would basically word sketch an object. Mm-hmm. Like I remember one time I was like in 8th grade and I had my writing notebook out and it was like on a free period or something. And I looked out the window and it was fall, like late fall, like a November kind of thing. And I just wrote like 3 paragraphs describing this cluster of trees that were out in the yard in school. And, like kind of just describing what they looked like and how they looked without leaves and what the sky and the ground looked like. Like I'm like basically like I did not write any, it couldn't be a story because nothing actually happened. Mm-hmm. But I just like sketched it with words.
Yeah.
Did you ever do anything like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a neat exercise.
That was. So if anybody out there is interested in learning how to write creatively and they kind of want to do it on their own, there's a book that they can pick up called The Artist's Way. Ooh. That'll basically teach you how to be creative in like, I think it was 13 weeks. Like every week it kind of like leads you through some stuff.
Oh, that sounds neat.
I mean, that was my pretty much my intro creative writing class, I guess. The only difference is the only advantage that I have that most people, everybody else won't have, is that I had somebody with a PhD that I could sit down with every other week and talk to for an hour or so.
Sure, kind of guide you through the process.
Not only that, but I could ask questions too, and like, hey, here's what I've been writing. Would you please look at this and let me know like what's good and what's bad and what I can do better, because I'm doing what the book's telling me to do. But you have the doctorate and you have all the training.
Yeah, you have some experience and some ability to teach this.
So. But that'll help you at least get a basis for stuff, and then after that, like But that Artist Way book was a lot of that, like freeing up yourself to be creative, doing all sorts of like exercises like that to expand your skill set.
Yeah.
It wasn't until later that it got into like, okay, you're gonna write 40 short stories this semester. Go.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
Yeah. We're going to just describe this car bumper.
Yeah.
And that sounds dumb, but the ability to do that comes in real handy.
To be honest with you, college level wise, like that was like 1 day of exercise,
Yeah.
maybe 2 days of exercise.
Yeah.
Like there were bigger fish to fry than being descriptive with your writing.
Yeah. I mean, I always loved that. And it was just a thing like I did as a kid, making like word portraits of objects. But it helps like in describing stuff.
It does. It does. It's if you're going to, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that you should be learning in high school, honestly. But I mean, if you're going to, like in your writing classes in high school.
Yes.
Like, I mean, yeah, you'll get a little bit of that in college, but there's other things to do in
Yeah.
college.
So to bring it back to deliberate practice, the idea is that we can improve parts of our GMing by focusing and doing specific work in one area. So we talked about two of them, right? We talked about rules, mastery, and descriptions. What are some of the other ones that?
I mean, there's voices. You could practice that all the time.
Absolutely, right?
There's improvisation. So improvisation, it's not as hard to practice as you think it is, because really all improvisation is almost like idea association,
Pattern matching.
pattern matching.
Yep.
So, and you can do that by yourself. I mean, that's as simple as like take 3 articles and
String them together.
String them together. Also doing word association with yourself, like a bunch of string of ideas. Like I'm seeing an orange microphone, which makes me think of an orange, which makes me think of Florida, which makes me think of old people, which makes me think of shuffleboard, which makes me think of games, which makes me think of football, which makes me think of the Super Bowl. See how I just did that? Like that is a whole bunch of just stringing ideas together.
Watch a TV show without sound
That is also a good
and
one.
make a story up as you go along, or just start watching a TV show and hit pause on the DVR, and then describe what you think is going to happen. Mm-hmm. Not to match the story.
Yeah.
But just go up to a point in the story, hit pause, and be like, oh, if I was writing the rest of the story, this is what happens in the next scene. Like that's a totally doable
absolutely.
activity that you can practice.
So, I mean, I guess the 101 tip for this is like pick a thing and learn it. And we just talked about descriptions a lot, so that is the thing.
Right, but don't do it coming out of the gate. You're going to have enough stuff as a 101 GM to be like, I must master voices. No, what you must master is running a good game.
Sure.
Then come back and work and hone your voices.
Running a good game is
A lot of work.
I mean, not only that, but like, I mean, there's a billion parts to that, right? Like,
Yeah, but I mean, if you take somebody who's like barely GM'd before and they're like, I must be the expert of all voices, you're sacrificing your focus on other things. Go ahead and practice voices in your game.
Sure.
But get your game up to a certain level.
My initial, I think, deliberate practice things would be rules mastery
Rules mastering.
and improvisation.
Absolutely.
If you can deliberately practice one of those two things or both of those things, those two things will help enhance your games quite a bit.
Rules mastery is going to cut down on your latency. That's the thing we talked about. Because the better you know the rules, the faster you will make things go. And improvisation is going to help you when the players do something unexpected. And
Yeah.
the players will always do something
They
unexpected.
certainly will.
Later, what you'll learn, and this is why later GMs prep so little, is that because it doesn't matter. Because the players, the probability of what the players do that you can predict decreases dramatically per every 10 minutes of the game. So if you do a really good job prepping the first 30 minutes of the game, and then your skill for improv is strong, you're going to run a great session. Because you'll come out of the gate strong. And then when it kind of goes all over the place, you'll know what to do.
It's true.
Yeah.
That's why I espouse foundational prep so hard.
Yeah.
We should talk about that sometime.
We should.
I mean, I think we have before, but we should talk about it again. All right, let's talk about utilizing story arcs.
The Arc of the Misdirected
Yeah,
is the name of the episode.
Episode 241. Would you tell me what a session is?
Yeah. All right. So session. We define it as the time we sit down and start playing the game until we stop playing for that time period. So Sunday nights, 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock.
I'm going to say, and it means nothing as far as story arcs concerned.
Zero.
Tell me
nothing.
Tell me what story means.
Story. It's similar to an adventure, but it's not necessarily site-based. A story has it's exactly what you think it is. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Yep, absolutely.
And you'll know a story when you see it.
Uh-huh. Tell me what an arc is.
An arc is a set of related stories that, when put together, tell a larger story.
That's correct.
They also have a beginning, middle, and end.
And an important part of them is they're connected.
Yeah, that stuff connects between story to story.
Now, tell me what a campaign is.
Campaign is one or more arcs played together. And you can play like a short campaign where you just play like an arc.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're just going to play through this arc. When this arc's done, we're going to go pick something else out.
That's The Hobbit.
Yeah.
Because The Hobbit, technically, here's the thing about novels, if you really think about it, folks. There is sometimes a chapter or two will tell like a short little story.
Right.
But when you put all the stories together, those chapters together,
Yeah.
they tell a longer arc.
Right. Like The Hobbit has a beginning, that's the first movie.
Uh-huh.
The middle, that's the second movie.
You're trolling somebody right now.
And the end, which is the third movie.
I want to throw something at you because I waited until all three of them were out before I saw any of them. Because it's one story.
It's
it's one arc.
It's one book, man.
It's one book.
That's a lot of inflation going on in there.
Anyways.
And
The chat room is starting. Here it goes. Oh, man.
Anyway.
Send might have some issues with The Hobbit.
So you can play a short campaign, which is like one arc. We're just going to play through this arc. We'll play through something else.
Yep.
Or you can play a longer campaign, which is at the end of the arc, you choose to play another arc.
I guess our Dungeon World campaign, the Airy Peaks, was more than one arc.
Absolutely.
Yes, it was
absolutely
absolutely
more than one arc.
Yeah.
There are several different phases of that game. There's several different story arcs. Now, here's the thing. You don't have to pick how many arcs your campaign's going to have.
It's true.
You can do a what I like to call the lease with an option to buy, right?
That's right.
Like, you can play one arc, and then you can ask everybody, like, hey, we finished that arc. It was incredibly satisfying. Do you guys want to
Play some more?
play another one? Right? And sometimes the answer will be yes. Sometimes it'll be no. Sometimes it'll be later.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what happened to my Blades game. Like, we finished the arc in Blades, and it was like, this would actually be a time to switch out games. Like, I wasn't even thinking about it, and then it was like, and then when it was brought up, it was like, it sounds like a good idea. Why don't we do that? We can always come back and play another arc of Blades.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's a thing.
All right, let's talk about some one-on-one stuff with arcs. So once you understand this concept of an arc, then you can build out a little bit of an arc as practice. So you deliver practice.
Yep.
Just remember, you never have to be beholden to the arcs that you've come up with. I mean, you do once you've run them, but before you get there, you don't have to be.
Correct. The thing with arcs is whatever's happened has happened.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So if you think of them more as outlines or guidelines, then they can be useful. They're part of this foundational prep that you do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What's another tip?
When you start working on arcs, don't get fancy. If you go back and when you go to listen to this episode, we're going to talk a lot. We talk a lot about different types of arcs being threaded together and having multiple types of arcs happening all at the same time, like a player's arc, a story arc, whatever.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Not out of the gate.
Don't do that. Your first arc, keep it simple, beginning, middle, end, straightforward.
Guardians 1.
Guardians 1. Very digestible movie.
Watch it and learn.
Guardians 2 has more complex arcs.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. That's excellent. Yeah. So, make your first arcs simple. Don't overdo it.
And then, over time, you can layer and weave your arcs and make them longer.
Yeah. I mean, I guess here's a 101 tip that's not on the notes. It has been my experience over the years that the more ambitious and, quote, never been done before ideas are often the most perilous things to pull off. It is amazing how a simple beat structure, a simple arc, even with the most experienced players, still winds up being perfectly satisfying. Like, there's I think when you're younger GM, there's a curve you chase where you try to do like crazier and crazier things. Like, I'm going to do a bait and switch. I'm going to do a bait and switch with flashbacks, and the game's going to start 100 years in the future, but the campaign's going to be nothing but like flashbacks to 100 years in the past that weave forward with things happening in the future. If you hear yourself describing that, I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm saying that it's perilous. These are
Yeah.
these are hard things to pull off.
I didn't start pulling that stuff off until about 12 years in.
Right. When you hear yourself saying that, take a breath and realize that a straightforward arc with good description, good collaborative play is seriously satisfying. And every now and then, if you want to do a flashback or something weird or nuanced, throw it in as like a beat change. But I have in the past, if I could go back and catch past Phil with some of the ideas I've had for arcs, like for campaigns and arcs and stuff, I would definitely just put a hand on my shoulder and be like, you need to take a deep breath. Like, relax. Like, you don't have to go this crazy.
It's true.
It's a lot.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
Don't be nuts. There's no way we're finishing this set of
when do you want to cut
topics
it
today. I think we do one more.
Okay. Whoa, boy. Wow, did we pick a lot of these?
I did.
I guess we know what we could do for next
I feel
week.
like we should just stop and do the rest of them next week.
Yeah, let's do the rest next week. Put 'em.
All right.
Can somebody put a marker in there? I'm kind of sucky at typing right now.
I got it. Don't worry. I'm
Thanks.
just gonna highlight it.
So GMing part 1 and part 2. GMing
Yeah,
101.
Yeah, why
part
not,
1 and part
man?
2.
I mean,
I like it.
because the rest of these are all really good.
They are.
Like we shouldn't toss these on the floor.
No, maybe we'll add another one or two in there.
GM 102, our next
GM 101 Part 2, I think will be called. Yeah, because it's not really.
the zoology to my botany.
Yeah, yeah. Is there anything in the chat room?
Yeah, actually, excuse me. Jason said when you guys were talking about the NPCs, body language is just as useful as voices, in his opinion. The apocalypse world of advice on having characters led by body parts, nose, fingers, etc., is super handy for embodying characters.
Yeah, sure.
Super handy.
I used to do a thing. I used to do a thing with a character where he had a gimp arm, and I used to put my arm in my shirt whenever he was
Yep.
there.
I had an NPC who had a tentacle for an arm.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
when I used to do, when I used to act her out, I would make my hand flop around. The
do
more excited,
this,
yeah,
yeah.
the more excited she got, the hand would flop around, and
that's
then
funny.
she would eventually have to like pin it down to the table, like put her hand on it to settle it down. Yeah, I just did that. I did that in Tales from the Loop. When you finally got to inside the boat, that
Yeah.
crazy dude.
Yep.
Like that crazy dude was like rubbing his head
Yep.
and yeah.
Well, come on. You do a good job of when Choji ever shows up,
Choji's awesome.
sort of mimicking the monkey
Yep.
running around
The
the, table.
monkey's very disturbing. Although the monkey likes babies. That's the thing we learned in the QCC episode.
Oh, that's funny. All right. Anything else in the chat room?
We're good for now.
All right. Well, I'll hit this thing then.
Do the thing.
It's the extra dimensional social media depository. Well, really just the social media depository. It's gone less extra dimensional these days. I wanted to talk about a couple of current Kickstarters. One got mentioned last week, but I want to say it again. Infinite Galaxies, the core rules. So this is a sci-fi action game powered by the Apocalypse. So, it uses the Apocalypse engine with some cool tweaks. It's got stuff for starship combat, robots, aliens, and other hallmarks of sci-fi. I will have a link in the show notes, and you can pick up that. You can go check it out from there if you want to.
Oh man, it reads like Traveler, man. The Jack, the Psionic.
Yeah, right.
Oh man, I see. I mean, I'm seeing some Traveler DNA like wound up into this thing.
Feels like it.
I mean, I'm not saying that as a bad way.
Me neither.
Right. I'm saying okay.
So Modifius right now is currently kickstarting John Carter of Mars.
Yeah.
It's got a bunch of days to go. It'll have a bunch of days to go even when you hear this.
You know what the good part is? Like, they're not going to do a shitty job of it.
Oh, no, not at
they're
all.
not.
I mean, it's already at $171,000. So, I mean, it's well funded. And
I mean,
whatnot.
it's going to look the artwork on
They've
the.
unlocked a ton of stuff.
I'm pretty sure Bob's got it. He backed it.
I backed it, but not for like all the tchotchkes
I
and
don't
stuff.
need all the
because
tchotchkes and
don't
stuff. I just
all
need the game so that we can
Yeah.
play it on Misdirected Eye.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like that.
Absolutely.
That's a thing. I downloaded the quick start. I'm actually going to give it a read.
Oh
see
man,
what
the
the deal is.
minis, the prototype minis look good.
I mean, I'm just fascinated by the game. I'm pretty sure it's their 2D20 system.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a 2D20.
that's cool.
And if anything, then it'll have that that Star Trek flavor to it. It's already know how their games kind of work because of Star Trek, so I'm interested in seeing how it
I
plays.
think there was a note in the initial specs for the Kickstarter that it's not just the exact same thing.
Sure.
But it's it's tweaked for the Barsoom
they
feel.
got a bunch
Yeah.
of 2D20 games at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
So I mean, I think their Conan game
It's
is
probably
2D20.
closer to Conan than it is to Star Trek, just from a
the game's
the pulp
portrait.
feel of it and stuff.
It's what?
The
The
book,
book is portrait.
the book is
or,
portrait.
the book is landscape,
yeah, landscape. Sorry.
and the slipcase
yeah.
stands portrait, so that you can put it on your.
Yeah. No, I'm
Yeah.
looking at it.
I love how
Ooh.
like me and Phil have such very different ideas about like what's cool about the thing. Like he's like, oh, this thing needs to be aesthetically pleasing. I'm like, this game needs to not suck.
Yeah.
I mean, Phil also thinks the game needs to not suck, and I also need to think.
Well,
the
I
thing
mean, I trust
needs to be aesthetically
Modifius
pleasing.
enough that even if it isn't quite my cup of tea, it's not gonna suck because that 2D20 system's now been around for like 4 different games. It's in what is it? Mutant Zero, Star Trek, Conan. Like I'm sure they got it. I'm looking at it from they're a big enough tier publisher
Yeah.
that if they're going to make a thing, now I kind of want to see what kind of cool thing they're going to do with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like they're, I don't know if they're quite a second tier. They're a second tier publisher, to be honest. They got to be up there with Evil Hat now. Like,
I think they're more than Evil Hat.
yeah, they do some pretty elaborate stuff.
They're bigger than Encoded Designs, so that's.
Design's like a tier 7 publisher.
pretty
Like,
much.
make some PDFs and shit.
No, man. Like think about what Modifius does and Chris Birch does. Like,
Yeah, that's what I'm
they
saying.
have a
Like-
bunch of IPs. They have the Star Trek game. They are definitely a second tier publisher.
Yeah, I mean, they got the Conan IP, the Star Trek IP. Like,
I mean, I like Evil Hat and what they do because they're trying to do original stuff too, like
Yep.
and
Yeah.
picking up games here and there.
well, and
which
I
is
think,
cool.
and they're diversifying. They've got board games. They've got
That's accurate.
RPGs.
Yeah, I mean, I would put them in the same category.
Yeah, they're definitely. So for me, to go back to what you're saying, for Modifius, like you can't just make me a book. Like, I mean, you can, but like, I want to see what you can do. Like, because you're a publisher, do something. Like, you're a publisher of enough size and clout.
Mm-hmm.
Show me something interesting. Like that board cube. While outrageous and far more than I would ever spend for a role playing game,
It's still kind of cool.
It's cool as shit,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
So like this, I was just looking, like the landscape book is interesting and novel. And to be honest, I run my games without a GM screen. So a landscape book in front of me actually is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. Anyway.
Next thing that I wanted to talk about, since that's current Kickstarters, is things that you might be interested in as gamers.
Mm-hmm.
So the Dresden Files cooperative card game is on iOS and Android. Bob, would you like to talk about that for a second?
I can't probably go as deep as you can.
No, I can't because you played it and I
I've
haven't.
played it. You haven't played it yet. Yeah, what they did, and it's a little difficult because I've only played it on my phone because my my True tablet
Yeah.
is incompatible with
Let-
the game.
Let me ask you a couple of questions then. How's the implementation? Does it play well?
Yes,
Cool.
yes,
That's nice.
they did a real nice job.
Do you know who made it?
Yes, I do, and I can't think of the. Damn
That's all right.
name.
You played Stormfront and you got whooped.
Oh yeah, I had a rough time. It's the game itself. I mean, it plays just like the game.
Uh-huh.
I mean, the graphics are really well done.
Is the animations pretty solid too?
Yeah, the game is smooth. Like I said, doing it on my phone, even though they have the zoom feature,
Yeah.
it's still everything's kind of small, but they do have the zoom feature in there so that you can pull the cards up and see what the card is and then put it back down. It did not take me very long at all to pick up how everything worked
Good.
because obviously you either read the instructions or you just kind of play it and figure it out. And it was mostly intuitive. They did a real nice job.
Very cool. So like I said, you folks can pick that up on iOS and Android. And if you head back...
Hidden Achievement. Hidden Achievement is
Achievement.
the name of the company,
Oh, there you
the
go.
software company that did it.
They're
If,
the ones who
um,
did the Fate cards as well.
Yeah, if you picked up the game during the Kickstarter and you have a bunch of the extras on it, you get all that stuff with your purchase of the iOS game, right? Or the Android game?
If you back the Kickstarter, you got at a certain level, you got the codes.
Yeah.
And the code will unlock it for wherever
Correct.
you install it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
once you buy the game on one spot, then when you install it on another device, it unlocks everything for you.
That's neato.
All right, let's move on to the next thing. So I always find this to be fascinating. So this is the list of 2017's highest grossing English language tabletop role playing crowdfunding campaign. So what Kickstarter did last year for role playing games. I love talking about this stuff. I don't know why, I just do. I have no like data. I didn't do any data mining or anything like that. So the most backed Kickstarter last year was Numenera 2, Discovery and Destiny, which was $845,000.
Yeah, no surprise there.
Now that's not the surprising thing to me. It's the drop off from 1 to 2. So like Torg Eternity by Ulysses Spiel was second, but they only came in at $355,000. 356 technically if I want to round up. That's a giant discrepancy.
That's a $500,000 discrepancy. Yeah. Roughly a $500,000 difference.
Like that's a lot of money difference right there. I feel like that shows the power of Monty Cook Games comparatively.
It'd be interesting to actually crunch these numbers and look at the standard deviation and stuff.
Yeah, because I mean, if we're gonna look at things like remember John Wick Presents, they had $1 million Kickstarter for 7th Sea, right?
Yeah, the year before.
This year they put out 7th Sea Katai, which only did 207.
Yep.
So that's a huge drop off.
It is
for like Monty Cook Games doesn't seem to be dropping off in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, but hang on. Where is I'm just looking like so Numenera 2 was 845.
Yeah.
But the next Monty Cook product isn't until 12, which is the Strange Box at 162.
But that's the deluxe box edition. Like that's not actually the
Yeah, but where's how much did
that was last year. It was like
Invisible Sundew.
It was like 400 and change.
Okay.
Maybe
I mean,
500?
Numenera is huge.
Yeah.
It is.
Numenera is huge, and it is extremely well supported, and it's very popular.
It is.
I'm really not surprised that they pulled in $800,000.
$800,000 for a second edition.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's more or less than their first edition.
Numenera was like 900 and change, wasn't it?
Hang on.
A couple other interesting things, like the Yellow King role-playing game, 225. I think that's fascinating. The Stars Without Number from Kevin Crawford did 192, and that's an OSR space game, so that's kind of cool, in my opinion.
That game is what you call it, Stars Without Number. That game's got a lot of support, like a lot of OSR support.
Yeah, totally, absolutely. DCC Lankmar. I mean, that Lankmar is a big property, but it's and also DCC. That's like peanut butter and chocolate right there.
Well, yes, DCC Lankmar is the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup.
Yeah, right. 187,000. It did really well. I mean, Changeling, I'm surprised only did 166. I thought it would have been a bit bigger game.
I don't know. Changeling was my least favorite.
Changeling is often regarded as one of the best written.
I know, and you've actually played it. I
have.
I mean, it's hard because Vampire and a Werewolf dwarf. Well, Vampire, no. You know what it is? The fourth. Even if it is highly regarded, think about it. Vampire, Werewolf, Mage. Like, those three were always more popular.
I'm surprised that Top Secret didn't do as well. It only did, 123 is not bad, right? But, I mean, it's Top Secret.
You would think, right?
Right.
And you would think that, well, you know what? I'll say this. To have been a fan of Top Secret, you have to have been about my age. It's not a brand name. It's not a brand name to younger gamers. Top Secret's a brand name to grognards. Like, we old crusty dudes remember playing Top Secret.
Yep.
So no, I could see where that one might not have caught a whole bunch of people, because the people who are super excited about this are the people who are going to GaryCon.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think actually 123 out of for an espionage game out of the OSR community, it's actually pretty good.
It is pretty good. That is actually pretty good. The Spire RPG by Grant Howitz, 96.
That's awesome.
That's great. Cthulhu Dark by Graham Walmsley, because Cthulhu Dark is so
widely regarded.
It's widely regarded as a great game. It's also it's interesting because to me it's a second edition, because he did Stealing Cthulhu, which had the Cthulhu Dark rules in it.
Right. But broke it out into something more.
Yeah. But a lot of the stuff in Cthulhu Dark is a lot of the stuff I think that was in Stealing Cthulhu, about advice about how to run horror games for Cthulhu, how to steal that stuff for your Call of Cthulhu games.
Jesus, Aces and Eights Reloaded.
Oof. I mean, it's a fascinating list, right? Like,
How many seconds does it take to reload?
Yeah.
this one is kind of crazy to me. So, A Touch of Class, 7 new classes for 5th edition by Morris from Endworld did $91,000. That's a lot of money for a class book.
Because Morris did it.
I know, sure, but it's a class book for D&D. It's not even a big class book.
Yeah, I'm saying the price point was probably really sweet for the actual price, and then it had all of Ian World backing it.
I mean, I think it's cool. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's neat. It's just interesting. Like, that is a huge.
Yeah, I wouldn't
get.
have expected to hear that number.
Yeah, that's a huge get for a book that is just about a player options thing.
I'm sure they cleared some serious cash with that.
Yeah. All right, I guess that's all I wanted to say about that.
Listen, there's some cool things in here. I mean, first of all,
How to Write Modules That Don't Suck by Goodman Games is on there too for $125.
yeah, that's cool.
That's a big get for a book like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, again, that's you're playing right into the DCC and OSR communities.
Yep.
On that
Yeah.
one. You got to know where your what you call it. You got to know what you're casting into.
Yeah.
It's true.
So,
All right,
They know what side of their bread's buttered.
let's slide into our topic for chatter, our community chatter, which Bob threw up and got a whole lot of talking about. So it's a question about XP from treasure versus XP from killing and how games enforce them or not. And really, the idea is like how your reward structure for your game actually
what's your
informs
currency?
play. Like,
I'm pretty sure high from my bed in high in my bed in the hospital when I saw this topic come up, I was like, I wrote an article about this in 2012. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, right? So the original versions of D&D, the old versions of D&D, your XP was from treasure. One
The vast
XP
majority of it, yeah.
for one gold piece.
it made the game a very specific kind of game.
Yep.
Well, it de-emphasized something that is heavily emphasized in
Killing monsters.
D&D.
Yep.
Right. It wasn't about killing monsters. If you could sneak in and steal the treasure, or if you could negotiate, or if you could bamboozle or put them in a trap, and you got the treasure, that counted.
Correct.
Now, conversely, my fighter, who was two experience points away from leveling up one time when I was like in 4th grade, once got into a bar fight with a guy just so that I could take his 2 gold pieces off of him so I could level up. Listen, here are the things about this, right? So, like we said, original D&D XP was for treasure, which emphasizes acquisition of treasure over everything else.
Correct.
Which also, if you think about it and you go back to a very early episode of ours, makes encumbrance even more important.
Absolutely.
Because if you can't carry that shit out, you can't get the XP for
Your
it.
strength with the 1850, your fighter with the 1850 strength now becomes a lot more
Well,
important.
this
'cause
is
they
why
can
you
carry a
then
lot
have
more stuff.
hirelings.
That's why you have hirelings.
And this is why people used to bring like donkeys into dungeons.
Yep.
Like there's a thing like that doesn't happen anymore where people would bring like goats and donkeys into dungeons.
Or the wizard would be like, "Oh, what spell should I? Oh,
Unseen
Tensor's
Servant.
floating
Tensor's
disc."
floating disc, man.
Yep.
That shit was important because you had to get that shit out of the dungeon. Then when they switched that to be XP for slaying monsters, now treasure wasn't as important
Unless
as
it was
killing the
magic,
monster.
You didn't give a shit.
That's right.
You gave a shit on a different
Yeah.
reason because money handled things like
Yeah.
scrolls and upgrades and things
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. But what you really needed if you wanted to level up was just to murder. So what suddenly becomes de-emphasized is avoiding conflict,
Yep.
negotiation. All of those things start to go down because you play to the... So here's the rule that comes out of it. You play to the central currency of the game.
Correct. That's where I was about to go. Because now neither one of those things emphasize playing for story or for story beats or for ends of stories.
Nope.
They emphasize playing for something else. So eventually we get to the point where we're like, well, how do we reward people for playing for story?
Yeah.
And that is a bunch of mechanics that came in a lot of ways out of the Forge.
Yeah.
Like that was the idea. A lot of the ideas that they were kind of hammering on. Like, well, I mean, instead of playing for these procedural things like getting or acquiring or killing, like, what do we reward? How do we reward people for playing to the drama?
Right.
How do we reward people for playing to moving the story forward?
And you see this in real life. Like there's a thing where I've seen this in a few places. If you've ever worked in a call center, if you've ever seen here's how it works. If you ever worked in a call center, whatever metric they measure for success is what the flavor of your call center will be. So if the metric for success in your call center is the amount of time, how little time you spend on the phone, you will see people dump calls or quickly rush people through calls because the only thing they're being measured on is how fast they can get through calls.
Yeah.
So they blow through them. Likewise, if you measure customer satisfaction at the end of the call, then the times take longer, but people will work to make their customers more satisfied.
Correct.
Same thing happens in the game. If you know that if you know that you require gold to level up, then not all you will care about, but what you will primarily drive you in that game is acquisition of gold. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times you see this when people house rule. A lot of times when you house rule D&D and you do milestones, like we're all leveling up when this adventure's done.
Yeah.
Now the game's open to all different sorts of play.
Yeah, it is.
Because you have changed the primary driving currency of the game. Gold is still important. I got to buy a potion. I need to resurrect somebody, whatever. But
Experience points are no longer a thing.
experience points are no longer a thing. So now negotiating with the kobolds, perfectly fine.
Really, what you're looking for is you're going to, as a group of players, look for the way to survive and the easiest method to get to the end of the scenario.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, there's times where that happens. Like, I mean, I like those things. Like sometimes I like when players outsmart me. Like I make a cool like trap box room, and the players come up with a really cool plan. Like I want to just look and be like, yeah, that's good. Like you earned it. You know, here's your, you know, whatever. Savage Worlds does a good job of this. Savage Worlds rewards play. You get XP for playing the game.
You do, and you also get...
And then you get some bonus XP on top for playing well.
You also get bennies for playing in a way that emulates the genre and entertains people.
Right, so that's your in-game... So that's your in-game currency, right? You play your hindrances, do cool shit, and then your XP for your advancement comes from play, and then there's like a couple, like you can pick up a bonus XP or two for like doing a really good job.
Somebody, Avi just mentioned gold displacement, which is kind of what we were talking about. I think it is actually what, especially we're talking about, like when we take the goal away.
Yeah.
Like I'm actually not as interested in that as a design aesthetic. Like I want to design in a specific kind of goal that rewards, moving towards the end of the adventure. Like you cannot actually garner your experience points unless you've solved the adventure, but sometimes you can't actually let people know what the end of the adventure is because they still need to explore that, right?
Right. Yeah, I think I think the other thing to be wary of, and I talk about this in that article I wrote on Gnome Stew, is that you as the GM, if a game has multiple currencies, so XP, in the case of Corporation, which was what I was writing that article about, Corporation had money, rank points, and XP. If you are focusing on one of those as a GM and your players are focused on a different one, you wind up having like some kind of, like you wind up having problems in the game because the players are chasing like the quote wrong things. And what happened was, and I don't know if Bob remembers this, we were playing the Shiiriko, and at rank 3, you get the Ion Katana, which is the badass ion sword that slices through everything. And the way you get up to rank 3 is you have to do a bunch of jobs that get you rank points. And the way you do that is by doing, quote, legal jobs. Like you do jobs for the government and things like that.
Yeah.
But those jobs don't pay a lot of cash because you can't do any under the table stuff while you're doing those jobs because you're getting them for rank points.
We're talking about a different kind of goal set with a different kind of restriction.
Well, that's what happened. The players all wanted cash because they wanted to buy cybernetics. And I was like, no, I want you to get the ion katanas because that's cool. And ultimately what I should have done was just started them at rank 3, given them the ion katanas, and let them play for money.
Yeah. I mean...
But it's an important thing. Like if your game has multiple currencies, make sure that you're all on the same page about which currency is the thing that's driving everybody at the table.
Yeah, conversely, you could have been like, this game isn't about doing illegal jobs. This game is about doing legal jobs, and you'll still get a few bucks here and there so you can get cybernetics, but really you're going to be playing for this goal.
Right, and the problem is specifically with corporation is there's too much good shit that you can buy with cash.
That's fine. Like, then it's the wrong game or whatnot. But
it was the wrong game.
Yeah.
It was actually the wrong fit for what I would have liked to have done, and that was ultimately why there were problems in that game.
Yeah, I think the point of this conversation, this article, is like understanding what, like you said, what your currencies are, and then how to actually structure the game so that your currencies matter in some way, shape, or form.
Because players will play to the currency.
Correct.
Yep.
Because I mean, it's so the reason I think this is fascinating is because me and Sean have been talking about this on Down with D&D, because it seems there are a couple of different ways to dole out experience points in Dungeons and Dragons these days. Like, they have the milestone system, they have ways to give experience points that are not necessarily for killing monsters, but they have also ways to give experience points for killing monsters, right? Like, there are goals that you can achieve that are story-based rewards. They have the milestone system, and it looks like D&D is starting to move to this, especially the AL stuff, is moving to this checkmark system where you're going to get X amount of check marks depending on how long the adventure that you're playing is. A 2-hour adventure will give you 2 check marks, a 4-hour adventure will give you 4 check marks. It seems like they're moving towards that. I don't know if I like that. Because it's what Avi said, it's the thing that's been bothering me. It's goal displacement. Like, you're not actually providing a real reward for any kind of play.
Right.
So, like, you're just hoping that the players will actually play to the thing that you want them to. Now, like, I'm much more fascinated by, like, the milestone thing. Like, all right, maybe you don't know right away at the beginning of the adventure, but through playing the adventure, you will discover what the actual end goal of the adventure is. And really, the only way you're going to get these 4 check marks is if you do this thing that I have written down on the sheet for these published adventures. But that also leads to this cool, like, design aesthetic of, like, if you want to run a sandbox thing that has, like, this milestone system to it, like, oh, I know that if once they finish this thing, it'll be a milestone. If they finish this thing, it'll be a milestone. If they finish this thing, it'll be a milestone. If they finish this thing, it'll be a milestone. Now, you know what they are, and it's your job as a game master to provide these hooks for these player characters to go and do those things.
Sure.
So they can hit their milestones.
Yeah.
Now we have an interesting goal system design aesthetic. Like, look, you know you're not leveling up or getting your reward until you complete milestones.
Yeah.
So you need to
which actually then drives play to complete these things.
Correct.
You know, it's like two things. So first of all, DCC, you get experience points
For surviving rooms.
for surviving the encounter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter gold. It doesn't matter what you kill. It matters that you started the encounter and you're alive when it's over, and that gives you a lot of latitude for what to do about an encounter. Sometimes that encounter can be evade.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I would say is that, much like video games, sometimes it's okay to put a dot on a waypoint on the plot that says you go here.
And even as role-playing game designers and adventure designers, we don't even have to do that. Like, as game masters, like, we don't have to, I mean, I guess the dot is the hook, right? Here's your hook.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's the thing, right? So in AL play, we need players to move through the story at a certain pace because AL content keeps coming out, and if people want to stay current, they need to kind of get through this stuff. So if you start rewarding getting through the story, then players will get through the story.
Not just getting through the story, but achieving whatever the goal of the story is.
Well, exactly. So instead of, like, deciding to go into town and steal giant wheels of cheese, they stay on track and actually
go into the dungeon and rescue the mayor's son.
Right, because play is driven by currency.
Because
right?
you ain't getting your points unless you go rescue the mayor's son.
You want to go steal cheese? You can be level 3 characters forever. Right, because you're not getting there. So no, I think it's really interesting, and I think it's a thing that is sometimes overlooked when people not so much by designers, but when people buy games. Read the advancement section, because the advancement section will tell you how this game's going to play.
Avi's talking about keys in the chat room, and that's not incorrect. But I always find that keys are too character specific for sometimes the things that I want to do. Like, I don't know of any games that do group keys. Like, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The idea is that, like, you could easily modify the idea of keys to be group keys.
Yeah. I mean,
Keys.
you can do advancement unlocks, You can do it. I mean, there's a number of different ways,
Yeah.
but I think, if you sit down and tell players like, look, you get check marks for, achieving the goal of each story. And, every so many check marks you would level up. The first thing you're going to have to do is, one, just make sure that the goal of the story is clear at some point. Doesn't have to be clear at the beginning.
Yeah.
But by the middle, it has to be clear. And then I think, they'll follow, man.
Mm-hmm.
They will follow.
Absolutely.
Cool stuff.
Yeah.
That's like a whole second episode.
It
we
is
just
like a
had.
whole second episode. All right, let's do some Patreon shout-outs before we get out of here. So, Effie Matson, one of our newest patrons.
Hey, Effie, and in the chat room.
And in the chat room.
Yay.
Andrew Dacey, Miko Froelich, Tabletop Gaming Deals. I believe that's Mo Tusino. Wayne Peterson, and Doc Palindrome, also known as Jesse Edmond.
Yeah.
And I wanted to mention a couple of court members because court members at the $10 level or higher get names, titles, I should say. So Eileen Barnes, she's the Duchess of Pandas Talking Games.
Yeah, she is.
Mm-hmm. Toby Sennett, who's the Lord of the Pond.
Sweet.
Rob Whitaker, who is the Marshal of Mark. John Smith, the Duke of the Workshop. And Craig the Lord of One Name.
Oh, that's a good one.
I know, right?
Nice.
Anything in the chat room for us, Bob?
Yeah, actually, Ange had a comment about the abusive players. Basically, she said Twinks is going to be Twinks. If the game has an exploitable aspect, the abusive players are going to exploit it. Doesn't matter if it's gold or if it's monster XP. If there's an exploit, they're going to do it.
Twinks going to be Twinks, but like when the way to advance is story, they're going to twink towards the story. I know I've seen it before.
Hopefully.
It's happened.
They will. I mean, they'll attempt to cheat to get to the end of the story as fast as they can, but a well-written dungeon will still make that a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, if the thing is drama, like you have to play to drama, they'll play towards the drama. If they're
Exactly.
gonna, I mean, it's the reason I don't have problems. Like people say, power gaming is terrible. I'm like, I don't really have a problem with power gaming if the game is written.
You know
well.
what? Power game responsibly. Don't
I mean-
suck out the joy for everyone else, and don't try to disarm the game master.
What's rule number one? Don't be a dick.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah. But the problem is that people who power game sometimes want to show off,
That's true.
and
I
so
mean,
then they violate rule number one.
I mean, you could still power game without being a dick.
You can, and maybe we should someday, Bob, put a pin in this.
Ding.
Maybe we should do one on responsible power gaming.
Sure. Also, that would be fantastic.
I like
Ethical.
to. I like
Let's
to
call it ethical power
You
gaming.
can also just go back into the Download D&D log of episodes and find the episodes where me and Sean have talked about how not to be a dick while you're power gaming.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
I like to differentiate between power gaming and min-maxing. Min-maxing is, to me, the ethical version. Like, I'm trying to tweak my character to emphasize certain things and go, power gamers are,
I think the term power gaming gets a bad rap.
Maybe.
I power game all the time.
I think that there is a good and bad version. Much like we have argued there's a good and bad version of GMPCs.
Sure.
There is a good and bad version of power gaming.
Sure.
And I have seen the bad version of power gaming plenty.
And you've seen the good version
I
of
have
it
seen the good version.
because you've seen me at your table.
Absolutely.
There's
Happens.
There's been so many times where we've been playing Fate and I will just rack up 17.
It's really funny. Because yes, and it's a great example. It is a perfect example of heavy power gaming, but it's in a place where I like that never bothers me. It never bothers me because it's like, yeah, you worked the scene, you created all the advantages, you stocked them up, and you are allowed.
It's almost like I played the game.
Right. Well, you
Yeah.
are allowed in Fate to cash them all in. Now, if people were concerned about, 15 shift hits and stuff, could easily make a rule that says you can never evoke more than, X number of things.
Yeah.
And they don't. And I don't think it needs it. I think that if you're smart enough and play hard enough to create all those advantages and let one player cash them in, because that is the ultimate way to beat something in Fate, is have 3 or 4 players, have 3 of them generating create advantages, and then finally let the hitter come in and
Absolutely.
scoop up 10 invokes.
Yeah.
Hey, Rockalypse, man.
Yep.
I think Senda did like a 34 shift hit.
Yeah.
And that was us dropping nothing but one create advantage after another all over that scene.
People are going to start hearing it because episode 2 just came out, but Avanti is live these days and starting to come out. I played a wizard. I use my cantrips all the time to do stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I power game the shit. of
I love
my
can't.
spells.
I love low level. To me, low level like cantrip power gaming, like using your cantrips as smartly as possible. It's just great play.
I did all sorts of stuff with my spells just to make things happen.
Yeah.
To grant us advantages when we could.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm going to dim this light. I'm going to knock this thing over. Yeah, if I knock that light over, is it now dark?
I'm gonna put out some dancing lights 120 feet out in front of the ship to help us guide through the storm because I'm a navigator.
Will
I
that get
already
us some
made my
advantage
navigation
on
check.
that?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I did
Smart.
all that stuff.
Smart.
Rob's got the next T-shirt idea.
Yeah, what's
Power
that?
game responsibly.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that's a
Power game responsibly.
absolutely.
There-
Much like hacking, because power gaming is really hacking the game.
Yeah.
Much like hacking, there's white hat and black hat hacking.
That's true.
So we could talk.
I'm a white hat power gamer.
I'm a white hat power gamer for sure. Okay. Well, with that, everyone, thank you so much for listening.
Hey, if you're free on Tuesday evenings and I'm not laid up in a hospital bed high on hydrocodone, join us 8:45 p.m. Eastern, 6:45 p.m. the Queen's time, and join us live on Twitch where you can chat with the other listeners in the ever awesome chat room for life and ask us the occasional question.
Did you say you're welcome? I don't think you said you're welcome.
I thought I slipped in a you're welcome in there.
Did you slip it in there? Maybe I'm just
I
missing
don't
it.
remember.
Yeah, it's fine. You're welcome.
She knows.
Regardless, yeah.
You're welcome.
If you can, nice. If you cannot make it to the live show, check out our podcast each week wherever you get your podcasts, and take a listen to some of the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, such as Down with D&D, Threats from Gallifrey, Vanished Insight, Pandas Talking Games, Cypher Speak with Darcy and Troy, the Gnome Cast, the Wednesday Evening Podcast, All Stars Playing Avanti, Hobbs and Friends of the OSR, and Zhang Yu Hustle, which on the most recent episode, Senda was on, talking about romance with Eric Farmer. You can and should also check out some of our brother and sister podcasts, She's a Super Geek, The Knights of the Night, and the always amazing Gaming and BS.
After you have established your 101 GMing skills and are ready to give us a challenge, leave us some feedback. You can reach us directly via the emails, Chris at misdirectedmark.com.
That's me.
Phil at misdirectedmark.com.
Guy with the broken arm.
Bob at misdirectedmark.com.
He's over there.
Check out our Facebook group.
Yes.
Hit us up on Twitter. The show and the network is at misdirectedmark.
Yeah-huh.
I'm at DNA Phil. He's at Robert M. Everson. And always bringing it smooth.
The Light 101.
I know, I was going to make another joke about bringing it smooth, but it's okay. And of course,
Interesting.
check out the epicenter of our social.
Smooth isn't the way that I do it.
Oh
man.
boy,
It's
hello,
usually kinda rough.
Well, we're falling into the after show early. I see. Please go check out our G+ community.
Yes, 412 people strong.
There you go. If you like what we do here and on the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, you can support our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MMP. Patrons get access to the after show, pre-production show notes, musical parodies, the Pandas Talking Games bonus outtakes, and other special releases.
Well, with that, this has been a Misdirected Mark production, which is the media arm of Encoded Designs.
I can still do this. Mic drop. We out. Right-handed.